Welcome to another Stompy 51 miniature adventure. Today we're going to be talking about this Griffin standard bearer, battle standard bearer of the Empire on the left, and on the right this concoction of a citizen of the Empire who does bear a passing resemblance to John Stallard, more on that later, and this old school ogre mishmash together for Dragon Rampant and perhaps Saga Age of Magic. Who doesn't love the Empire from the Warhammer Fantasy Battles universe? The colours, the sashes, the armour, the skulls even, and the slightly odd and nasty obsession with extremist early modern religion. And this is one of my favourite books, Uniforms and Heraldry of the Empire, out of print, albeit there does seem to be a PDF floating around the web, but we don't comment on things like that. The artwork is just extraordinary. Bands of men doing their best against the denizens of evil with fairly limited technology, but largely steel, albeit ultimately just force of will. And so I got quite excited when Games Workshop gave us a bit of a look behind the veil of large forces and gave us a look at what it might be like to, for general day-to-day citizens of the Empire. A duelist, well, two duelists, a dude with a performing bear, a kind of merchantman, and some kind of scribe. And I bought them in 2010 for I think something like £7 a pop. I have some grainy footage from a 10-year-old YouTube video I did, and here you can see him in the silvery flesh.
But they'll look okay next to Empire miniatures.
Ah yes, I never really liked him. He was like a duelist. He didn't really look Empire at all, he looked weirdly Victorian, dressed up in his weird old fogey Renaissance garb, but with medals of like a Prussian officer duelist or something, which also seemed a bit anachronistic. And then there's this dude who I also recently flogged, because although he looks perfectly nice, again, he's not actually carrying a weapon, and I wasn't really sure what to do with him. And again, instead of him, I could get sort of 4 or 5 other miniatures. Him, of course, I've kept.
He looks worse in the paint job than he does
with his 2 pistols up in the air, very Empire.
Braces of pistols in the rules anymore,
but you don't need to blow 20 to 30 quid a pop, because you can get Citizens of the Empire by the dozen from this lovely Danish company with their Dunkeldorf range. Dunkeldorf, the dark town, clearly a Mordheim inspired idea. And I mean, I'm flicking through them pretty quickly, but you can see that there are many little Mordheim Empire compatible characters. Some darker and scarier than others, some more comical. And I actually happen to have some Dunkeldorf miniatures. Over here we seem to have a father and daughter witch hunter team, keeping it within the family. And if we compare them to the Citizen of the Empire, all seems entirely in keeping to me. Waving his torch around and both having a pistol. And then we've got the duelist and the lady priest of Sigmar, who does faintly remind me of the deliciously evil and slightly unhinged Queen Sibeth Kane from the series C. they are entirely in keeping with the citizen of the empire, because obviously people are different heights. And if she stood up straight, she'd be a proper Brienne of Tarth type character, because this fellow is a lot taller than the average, I think, or a bit taller. And apropos of nothing, there's Luther Huss, I think he was called, in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, with his sledgehammer, riding on a warhorse with accompanying 3D printed pooch. And Archon Studios in Poland are releasing a kind of sprue plastic-based set of Citizens of the Empire, basically, very soon, which you can get through North Star. And these, I think, will end up being about 80p a pop. So bring on them. And I think they're all in one box. But let's move on to how I mashed together one of my Citizens of the Empire with an ogre into something that could fight battles. So I thought Mr. Moneybags here, this city merchant, could instead be some kind of elector count or princeling or just grumpy kind of town alderman or something who's been placed in charge of an empire army. And, he doesn't really do the fighting himself. He stands back, and he doesn't pay for anything either. But he stands back and he lets the troops work things out themselves, protected, of course, by his hireling over here, Mr. Ogre. And Mr. Ogre, you can see, is kind of painted in more of an older sort of style, more of a kind of conceptual style. Now I would just paint that kind of all flesh, because I don't think there are actually any underlying knuckles over there to paint. You just feel it? No, slightly, but I would only do it very, very vaguely and gradually. And so all I did was kind of spruce this up. I left the flesh largely as it was. I thought it was good enough. The silver I just kind of dry brushed a little bit and smeared a bit of rust effect over it. And as you may remember from some of my other videos, I still haven't come up with a good solution for gold. I just painted it one of the Games Workshop golds, which took like 3 layers to kind of get to be plausible, and then just did a bit of, they've got this very, very burnished kind of almost silvery gold, and I just did I think it's called the wet overbrush or something over this, and then just did a mixture of a red and black wash over it, and then just smeared my finger over it just to kind of leave the glinting bits. Now obviously your eye will be drawn to the entertaining flag, because when I ripped off the spearhead and placed a flag from one of the Empire soldier sprues, I forgot what they're called, Guardsmen of the Empire, whatever they're called. When I plonked this on, I thought, how shall I paint it? I mean, it's got to kind of be a bit different to yellow, maybe accompany the blues over here. And I've got loads of Prussian blue, because I don't have any Napoleonics, and my brother gave me this bottle of Prussian blue. So why don't I use that? Now I looked at it and thought, well, what pattern can I paint on this without needing hours of artistry? And I thought, oh, let's put just a cross on it. And I thought, well, what would really bling out? I thought, well, maybe what yellow would kind of match what he's wearing, because yellow is my favorite color. And I painted it, and you get into a bit of a funk. And then I looked at it and I thought, this looks familiar. I mean, I'm not a total cultural ignoramus. I even know about 2 words of Swedish. Jag vill ha en öl, I think, means I need a beer. I'd like a beer. And skål means cheers. But anyway, let's not digress too far. And so now that is regularly known in my friendly local gaming store, not as the friendly giant, but the Swedish ogre. No offence to any Swedes watching. And the back is nothing to write home about. As ever, I went a bit wet and wild with the scenic basing, making it look like some kind of beautiful little field in a Europe, well, a fantasy Europe untouched by industrialization. And he has actually commanded some of my armies. I remember one battle of Dragon Rampant in particular, 32 points, quite a big game as opposed to 24, where the boss over there counted as elite foot with his big scary Swedish ogre, supported by a friendly unit of similarly elite foot, the great swords you can see over there, a giant, 2 units of light spearmen, and this Hellblaster volley gun. It's not called that, whatever that rocket launcher is called, because the game of Dragon Rampant is so conceptual. They don't have artillery, but they count effectively as heavy missiles, which are the same as 12 crossbowmen. The scenario was that I had to get that chair with my army and just walk it off the other side of the battlefield without being stopped by my opponent, a kind of army of real, even pre-Oldhammer kind of stuff. It was all kind of very old school orcs and random things like that little basilisk, plus some of the newer Oathmark goblins. And I stupidly gave it to my giant thinking, look at him, he's very fast and he'll just walk it off the field and they'll be too scared to attack him. But basically he's an absolute glass cannon. So that little basilisk, which counted as a small beast or something, ran up to him and caused enough wounds to make him drop the chair and take a step back. But that foolishly left the basilisk surrounded by my elite foot over there, those great swords who had been polishing off some goblins amidst the rocks, and they just turned around and then just made the basilisk run away. Those diminutive little wolf riders in the corner managed to sort of pepper many of my troops, causing many little wounds, and then running away until they kind of slightly miscalculated and got chased by these light spears, and let's just say the little gobbos didn't like it up them. The boss, in his capacity as elite foot, did have a go at taking out a fair number of goblins, but basically, once the great swords got hold of the golden chair, they just grabbed it and then just slowly walked off the field. Well, they never quite got to the edge of the field, but my opponent just chucked in the towel. And then let's talk about this battle banner bearer of the Empire. And again, this was probably painted at a time in about 2012 when I had a bit more patience and fewer obligations in life. Would I bother with this now? I mean, crikey, look at that banner. Well, the back's not so bad. Just an Empire skull. You can never have too many skulls. Oh no, it's been chipped, but we can easily rectify that, I'm sure. There's a griffin. Actually, he might be called the Griffin Banner Bearer. I can't remember. With his skulls everywhere. Flaming meteorite of Sigma. And I never bother painting eyes. Not now, not then. Ooh, let's get rid of that little bit of fluff there. And doesn't he look fun? I mean, rebasing him on this round base, was it sensible? I mean, yes, in the sense that when he was on a 20mm square base, he just kept falling over. But now, unfortunately, I can't use him in Kings of War. Unless, I suppose, I just put him in the center of a big block and just surrounded him with others. So it doesn't really matter what kind of base he's got. And I suppose if I was really feeling militant about it, oh no, well, if I were feeling militant about it, I could always rip him off and rebase him when that Warhammer Old World game comes out. Albeit, who knows who'll be playing that then, or how good it'll be. At which point, I think we'll call it there. Thank you very much for watching to the end. Please do like this video if you thought it was worth your time, and comment, open to any thoughts as ever. and please do subscribe if you haven't done already. Thank you very much. Keep well, keep safe, and see you around here soon.